aware of this themselves. It's like, we're thinking in template. We're not picking outside the box. The problem is creativity. That is the thing they thought was the issue. We've moved on a little bit beyond that, but now they see another problem, which is we need to be customer and consumer focused. So if we know this is probably not the best idea for a new innovative product, let's go ask consumers. So I have another example, which is this product. This is a typical consumer product. I found this one downstairs. How many of you know what this is? How many of you are basically pretty regular users? It's like this on a daily basis. How many of you really love the fact that it exists? And if I would do what is called a deprivation study, which means basically watch your behavior, right? Take your product away. How happy would you be? You would be pretty upset if you don't have this.
If we tell that there is a risk that maybe potentially there would be disruption, then we make.
Oh, yes.
Hyper crisis.
Exactly.
So
here's the thing.
I need a definition. If I do market research, and if you've ever touched any of these consumer markets, you'll know there's just so much research being done. What they look for are loyal users. So you are perfect examples of the type of consumer I would want to talk to when I'm innovating this. Now, here's the thing. There's about 15 of you. I could actually chop you up in like groups of 5, then hear all your ideas about toilet paper and take that to Kimberly-Clark or to Essity, one of the big players in this, and say, I've done research on this product with real loyal users, and it's going to be amazing. Look at these things they've created. Now, how many of you think you would actually be able to create a good idea for Widowy? 0. The chance is very, very low. I know from numbers, just pure statistics, there's probably 1, maybe 2 of you who are so-called lead users. You actually do care about this product. And you've already watched it. You've probably already seen it, let's say, one of the toilet tubes, thinking, oh my God, I can practically see through this. This is like really cheap, two-fly. It is off. It doesn't even feel very nice. So you're probably already thinking, I have so many good ideas to improve this. But the thing is, lead users is only like 5 to 10% of an audience. Those are the people you want to talk to. That's not the way consumer goods industries think, because they think they need to talk to a lot of them. They think like quants, I guess, in finance. So those 2 issues are prevalent across, you could say, every market you're trying to innovate. And it's, I guess, if you would leave now, you've already taken an important piece of information that I can share. So let's dive in. So spotting winners to invest in. So just imagine, indeed, if you are sitting sort of in the top end of the pyramid of a consumer goods company, and you know you're only taking in cliches, and you see all the research that you're receiving on what to do actually leads to just as much failure as if you would not ask anyone at all, obviously it starts to feel like a lottery or something like a casino at some point where you just need to play the numbers to win. And I've had the benefit over the years of coming in as a relative outsider, originally as an engineer moving into consumer goods innovation, and then as a consumer goods innovation person into investing. And you coming with a fresh pair of eyes, you don't have the templates, and you just start realizing things work a bit strange here. So that's kind of what I've been talking about. So what are basic innovation principles that you just need to be aware of just how new things work and why and they do or do not succeed. And then with the investment plan, which is called Natera, sort of how we spot winners. How we know of a particular business, and our world is circular economy, so it's very much sort of the world of better for planet, the world of greed, the world of making impact. How we can be pretty sure something is going to be a good investment versus a bad one without looking at a single Excel sheet. Because the principles translate really well. Now, why did I put chopsticks on there? Just to give you a sense of Factoni. How would Factoni look at a world of green investing? So Pat Tony would probably notice that everyone always talking about the Amazon rainforest being sort of cut down and forestry disappearing everywhere. But no one seems to be worried about the fact that the world uses 1 billion chopsticks every day. And that's 500 million pairs of them. But no one's worried about, okay, so where's all that coming from and where's it go? And of course, Pat Tony knows there's probably something's wrong in the narrative. Maybe it is. In all words, and also, I promise I will not refer to Apple, Uber, Spotify, Nvidia, or any of these cliche big stories, because I will destroy the paper. Shampoo. That's the sort of the stuff. Listerine. So everything I'll be showing now, some of it in some way is in the latest book. But if you want to make notes, feel free to do so, of course. So a little bit about myself and where I'm plucking some of this from. So I guess I already mentioned first half of my career, first 10 years almost as an engineer, then consumer goods, sold 2019, or 5 years ago now. And nowadays I with Unaterra, looking at young businesses, small businesses, and trying to predict maybe what comparable they go up. It's sort of what is noise, what does the signal in the noise look like which you were referring to at the very beginning. So this was my world 10 years ago. So you'll recognize, and this is just literally stuff. We did 2,000 projects with a team of about 70 people. And the number, of course, that says 5 billion incremental revenue generated across companies like this. Of course, there's a power law behind it, because 2,000 projects leads to like 600-700 launches. Probably about $1 billion of that is one product, which is Vanish Crystal White. If you have your laundry stain removers, or the Americans Resolve Crystal White. Oh no shit. Yeah, hey, billion a year now. Okay. And a lot of smaller, you could say, successes as well. But what this is about, of course, is creating products that you can launch and that then stay inelastic. That's how you make the numbers. Yes. Now, what all those businesses have in common, of course, they're all working in mature markets, which is usually not what you think when you think about innovation. You think about tech, you think about NVIDIA, you think about exciting new difficult things. But if you would be toothpaste and someone's asking you to create new remedy, where do you start? Toothpaste has been around for 100 years. How do you change that? Exposure. Well, and here's the thing. This question is one of the questions we were always asked when we would receive an innovation brief, as in do something new. So if innovation is the answer, so you're coming to us to innovate, but what's really your original question? And surprisingly, there wouldn't really be a question behind it. But of course, if you do this long enough and you work with enough businesses and then go through a number of years, which what you realize is this is what it all comes down to. You're creating a product or a service of some kind, and you need to create a revenue. What does that mean? To put money in, euros go in, and more than the original euro needs to come out. Some letters rolling off here in the so you need to create incremental profits. This is usually also how I troll in the sort of Falebo sphere, the traders who are basically just dealing in scarcity, denying any value whatsoever, just, I guess, gambling on something becoming scarce. Adding value is very much for the world of the creatives come in and build something new that wasn't there before. So this is the opposite of a zero-sum game. But it's a little more sophisticated than this, because if you put the real business lens on and realize innovation is a tool, it's literally just a tool. It's not a goal, it's a tool. What is the goal? So the goal is you either want to protect your business, making sure that no one can steal the share you have had, as it's a free economy. You want to grow maybe your business, which could mean stealing share from others or moving into places that you're not yet present. Or you might want to transform your business. And this whole book I've recently put together is everyone focuses on transform, when actually that's the last thing you want to do. And I'll show you in a moment why that is. But this idea that game-changing, disruption, transformation is the only way to success is really stupid. What do you need to do this? Really, really simple. In fact, on the one hand, you need to understand what are real frustrations of your market patterns, the things that are not working for them, which changes over time. It's a dynamic world. It's always changing. There's always a new frustration on the radar. And how can you translate that frustration into a solution that you can make in a commercially viable way? Which means the people who figure out what isn't working in the market do also need to speak closely with the people in R&D and manufacturing who know how the factory works. And that disconnect, we built a whole agency for. Because we could do this bit and then show, now you know what market needs. Let's go look in your own factory together and see if they can actually make something which isn't very expensive to do. That dynamic is how innovation works. It's really not any more complicated than that. But what happens below these three words is very different. So that looks a bit weird. Let's see. But it's basically three cycles that have very different properties. If you say, I'm going to innovate to create a new portfolio, the Cortex cycle is very simple. You just change your color, change your flavor, do something which is pretty close in, and you can launch it because it's very similar to your previous product. If it's about growing, it probably means in a new format, something which is more fundamentally different from what you've done before, which means R&D needs to get involved, your manufacturing team needs to get involved, salespeople need to be retrained. And when you're disrupting, then probably that means firing half the people on your team because they have the wrong capability, rehiring you, or just building a new factory, doing all kinds of stuff, which just makes this a very, very horrible journey. And last but not least, on sort of some basic principles, if you look at disruption and you put it on this 2x2 on degree, whether or not you're disrupting the market and to what degree you need to disrupt your business to achieve that, they are very strangely correlated. Because people tend to think, particularly in say, forward environments, that there is sort of this excitement axis, that in order to do really new things in the market, you also need to really rethink how your business is put together. So they gravitate for sort of the far right end of that previous chart. When they start doing that, they usually end up here. Yeah, they changed the business dramatically. Whatever they thought of didn't work. So they've ended up not disrupting the market and only disrupted their own business. Why is this? It's because of that disconnect I mentioned earlier. If you have a marketing person, which in my role at Consumer Goods, typically responsible for innovation, they have no understanding of what a production process, but also because their career cycle is like it can bus. They see a competitor do the product they make, but with a nice print on, and they need an extra third layer, they think, we need to have that as well. So they're very reactive in the let's say, understanding it on market work. So then they take this production and say, let's do this with third layer and some prints on. The production said, we don't have any facility to do this, so it's not going to work. So they end up copying the market rather than disrupting it in a way which destroys their own organization. Then, of course, everyone think, well, let's go up there, whereas in reality, you need to be out here. You need to find ways to disrupt the market with as little disruption to your own system. That is, say, keep it open.
You can see this at every restaurant on the planet. If they have a special that doesn't fit into their workflow,
It just orientation bullshit. It goes up the menu. Exactly. There are reasons you might want to go into different quadrants as an activation or a temporary limited edition, or there's all these reasons you could do it, but you have to have the business focus one. Because in the end, everything new you do needs to feed literally from the future of the business. The two, say, loops you had on screen, the one pays today's salaries, the other might pay tomorrow's salaries. And that's the game you can play advantage. So, very nice. Let's have a bit of fun. So how does this translate into impact investing? So what you need to know about Unagata, the fund we set up, is actually fairly simple. We're focused on circular economy, which solutions for the circular economy. Now, what does that mean? It's not a separate economy which operates in separate universe from our current one. It's how to make the current one more circular. So make it more efficient use of material streams, ensuring that they can be reused in some way, or that they can be recycled, or it can even be separated. So that takes you basically into the world of packaging materials, food ingredients, textiles. Those are the kind of worlds we operate in. It's really a very simple goal because, by making it more circular, the people uses less pollution. You could talk about climate change, it's super high up, or ocean plastics, super high up. In the end, if it pollutes less, it's probably good. Now, how does that work? Let me give you a case from the automotive industry. I have two cars. They're both red. They both have four wheels. One is the Chevrolet EV1, and the other is a Tesla 3. They're actually on spec. They're very similar, surprisingly similar. If you would only have a description on paper, you would struggle to find the difference. Now, no prizes for guessing which one was a relative commercial success. It's Tesla. Now, why do you think that is? Any ideas? Gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Very aesthetically pleasant.
Nice clothes.
Nice logo.
This is the new thing.
I was gonna say it was new.
Then you
Absolutely not.
Not
Electric cars declared a big car.
like a status symbol.
It's not a symbol, that's a tax process. And that's why it's, yes, for a consumer, would that make the
Skew more or just like the or
I mean,
to set
they will buy a car that, like in the 70s, had the rear wheel had hidden. In a way, you're all right.
you're all, but this thing just delivers fantastically on, let's call it carness, delivering a car experience. It had tremendous acceleration, it basically turned what were perceived negatives of electric into positives and delivered a great car. Now, you will not believe when you dive into the world of, let's say, green and impact and better for planet investing, how much compromise is expected to work well just because it's better for the planet. And I have a fantastic example of how deep that goes. And speaking of behavioral economics, this is a case which is just stunning. You all know this product. Because my dad's, even if you're from the US. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So actually, already sort of mid-80s, 1980s, sort of news was coming through. This product had been on the market since the Second World War. If you eat a lot of this, you're going to get a really big butt. And your teeth will start falling out. It's really not good for you. You really should not eat too much of this. No. Continue eating it. So now just imagine, because it's 30% sugar. So now imagine, great. Come since 2015, let's say the green wave, and sustainability is important, better planet is important. So 10 years old. So we got another thing to not forget about investing in green. Investing in oil is 100 years old or 150 years old. Investing in green is 10 years old. So the immaturity of this space also means a lot of these metrics aren't set in stone yet. No one really knows what's important. So now, 2015, some tree order comes along and says, did you know the other 2/3, half of that is palm oil? So every sandwich you make with Nutella, that's another orangutan homeless, basically. And this is, you could say, the big problem any green innovation has is people didn't give a shit about killing themselves. They will care nothing about killing someone else. The very, very, very few people who go to, let's say, eco stores of some kind to buy the non-palm oil chocolate spread, they get that in 2015. They are not on the market anymore. So if you want to do things well at scale, which is basically servicing mass markets, mass consumers who do not care, you need to do it in the Tesla, which is you deliver something extraordinary on what they expect from the category, because every category comes with expectations. Toilet paper comes with expectations. Deliver to those, exceed those, and do it in a way which is greedy. So that's, you say, the very high-level basic truth. Now, I have a few of these principles, and for each I'll show how that sort of manifests itself in an investment we made with the fund. So an example of this is a business called Another Tomorrow. They're a fashion company. They work from New York. They've actually now created a second one office in Europe. And they do this pretty high-end women's fashion. They had the cleanest supply chain sitting underneath this that you will ever see. Everything is based on only two materials, an organic cotton and an organic wool. The organic cotton and the textile they make from it is the first in the world that is in fact carbon sequestering. So the more you make, the better it is, which is absolutely incredible. It's magic. They don't really talk about it. They make sure that their, I recall the portfolio in fashion color collection, is just absolutely amazing. But they also design their collection to not harm, you could say, the principles. So, for example, they don't have a winter collection, a summer collection, which they change every year. They have one collection where they sometimes add a bit and remove a bit. So that if you come back like 5 years later, you'll see that actually the stuff they have on City was sort of they're selling still fits reasonably well, but it's already a mammal wardrobe, and it could just add to that. What's more, you can take whatever is in your wardrobe and say, dear Another Tomorrow, I'm going to sell this back to you. And they will then resell it. It's called re-commerce, which is one of the big solutions, circularity. Anyway, so it's a super desirable product. So now the average basket size, as it's called, is $900. Now, as a guy, I spent $900 every 3 years. So the desirability, again, poor Tesla does very well, create desirability such that people will buy you regardless of what comes sustainability point of view is patent. Here's another principle. This is one, if you work in any kind of development, whether it's in IT or in finance services or anything, or products like myself, very, very simple principle is every product, every category, every brand, everything you can imagine has its own push and pull principles. So, plenty of V2C means business to consumer, B2B means business to business. And the question is, what is it going to take for people to adopt what I have? Because it's another big mistake, definitely in, let's say, the world of startups and scale-ups, is they think they're watching in a vacuum where no one else is operating. It's like, oh, I'm so unique, no one does this. Hell no. Everyone does that. Thousands of players are doing almost exactly what you do with very little difference. How you can make sure they stop buying what they're now buying and move to yours because it's better for outdoor revenues, but also it's a cleaner and, say, more human solution. So again, you do this like literally in 10 minutes for your own category or your own product line. This sort of, what are things that attract people to me, and what are things that stop people from coming to me? And this is the big ignored area of every, you could say, startup, because they don't might talk about why people wouldn't buy. But if you underline that with them, in particular in some basic truths, it's really quite shocking. So for consumers, for example, the moment you illuminate on convenience, like adding an extra process step, which a lot of these green products have, they're just so fucking annoying to use. And you don't have a gear, and in Europe, now every cap has a little thing connected to this. It's like the stupidest thing you can imagine. If you could stop using it, you stop it tomorrow. But making things less convenient is a guaranteed sort of failure driver. So very easy way to assess any startup or scale up in this space. Say, okay, is it less convenient than what you're competing against? Well, forget it. I don't care how we do it. Similarly, when you're doing something business to business, particularly say in manufacturing, new supply chain infrastructure. You need a new factory line to make this product. No one's going to buy it from you. It's very simple. Making sure you can interface with what already is done. If you have, like, actually recently as Pokemon, they made pigment for paints. Paint market is huge. If you make like a 1% improvement in the decorative paints for walls and stuff across Europe, you're making like a bazillions in dollars and CO2 reduced. But they had a powder for their pigments. The whole industry works with liquids. The industry is not going to switch to powder. So unless you have a liquid solution, no point progressing. Now, here's an example of that. This was actually our very first investment, which started the whole fund going. This is Pulptex. It's a paper pulp-based bottle for liquids. It's really smart energy here. As you can see, it is not very pretty. They can actually make it a little prettier. You might know the technology from Johnny Walker's limited edition on black. So they've done millions of bottles already. Now, why does a business like Diageo, who have a lot to lose, even just consider something like this for Johnny Walker, which is, of course, one of their leading brands? Well, yeah, they see it's not the prettiest. We also know it's not even the best from the compostability or recyclability point of view, but it was for sure the only one they could run on their normal filling lines. And, of course, filling line, you might not realize, but a filling line that can do, let's say, 100,000 bottles a day, it's looking at a £20 million investment. If you can change filling line to switch from glass to paper for like 100,000 euros, that's a really good deal. That's nothing. So thinking that way on what is going to scale and scaling through in existing infrastructure, that's how this works. Here's another one, we're following up a little bit. This is a fascinating, it's interesting, this little word, Triz. If you're ever interested in sort of the origins of why Soviets were so far ahead of the Americans right after the war, technology-wise, like getting Sputnik up first, and so that they're being like way ahead of everyone else on a lot of, let's say, the big industrial technologies. They use a system called TRIZ. It's a huge body of knowledge. This is one element from it, which basically says, am I progressing? Very interesting words. It's not, am I doing something new? But am I progressing from where I was, where the industry was, where the technology was, where whatever was. Now, there's a non-zero chance that someone here in the room has worked on lawnmowers in their career, but I'm assuming it's going to be zero for today. You have worked in lawnmowers too. Great. So I'm going to challenge Mick here that we can all come up with some fantastic, progressive ideas for lawnmowers without really knowing the technology, because it's 4 principles that sit underneath just about every leap forward. And I've tried to disprove this for 20 years and I've failed. So one principle, which is the principle everyone zooms in on, it's like the go-to sort of dial to turn, just and this would make it more perfect. So in the world of lawnmowers, that means definitely the UK, this is going to be about perfectly flat lawns. And you're going to need a laser guidance system to make sure that happens. Everyone puts ceramic blades on. It's just going to be incredible. The next one, let's still get autonomous. Autonomous means it doesn't need information or fuel from the outside world to deliver whatever benefit it's intended to deliver. Ah, wow, that's easier. I'm going to put a big brain on, like a microchip of some kind, that makes it like you all know robotic lawnmowers. Put solar panels on so it doesn't need any sort of electricity from outside. Already that feels as it's progressing. If I add instant, which is this third one, very interesting, because then I'm going to make it so smart that it'll judge itself when the grass is a certain height, which I just program in my app. I want 6 millimeters, I want 2 centimeters, or whatever, and off it goes. Feels like progress. And then this fourth one is an interesting one. It comes free, but much cheaper. There's maybe another way to stand that. If you think about these factors, what you realize, if you are in the lawnmower industry or whatever industry you're in, and you can tick one box, that's fine. That's your line extension. That's sort of the improvement everyone knows you need to do all the time just to retain share. If you tick 2 boxes or even 3, your competitors start getting really nerds. They do. If you do all 4, you're kind of revolutionizing per capita work, because I know there's probably 1 or 2 really smart people here in the room who are already thinking, hold on, people are on lawnmowers or on short grass. I'm going to invest in GMO for grass that only goes to this mind, and I'd destroy the complete lawnmower industry. And it's that kind of thing. John loves that, but
AstroTurf.
that's another way, but you then sort of, you lose some other characteristics of having a nice lawn. This is interesting because a lot of, let's say, this is almost like an output, an unintended output of a lot of the digitalization that we see across many service industries and various industries, actually. Problem golf today, and I mean, our business got bought by Accenture. The only thing they want to do is let's make everything digital. And making everything digital, actually more often than not, doesn't lead to progress. It leads to something which is worse. The car button example that we saw in Seb's presentation is a beautiful example. Yeah. If you go back, though, and you say, okay, this is what I want to, how I want to progress, then digital does become a way of getting there. And a lot of the big revolutions are, of course, where digital kick both boxes. So when you look at investments, are they helping the category along one of those 4? And this is one of the crown jewels in our portfolio right now. This is Grey Parrot. They make these boxers. They're actually now super thin inside, and then you can see it's on a waste sorting line. So this is like 3 steps down the process. This is a line like that's a plastic patching. So it's all plastic. So there's no wood or say other strange materials on there anymore. And usually what you would need to do for the final step is install like a really big, like $300,000 camera, which does all kinds of lighting tricks to judge what type of material is this precisely. And then they are buying it in the water bar or puffer, as it's called, and it sort of does the final split. And then you end up with these bashes that are like HDPE, LP, PET, whatever plastic type. And based on its purity, which you would then sample, you get a different higher or lower price in market where you resell it into, let's say, the recycling stream. Now, what have they built? Something much simpler. It's basically a simple camera, same quality, actually a lower quality than Claudio's camera. With a computer behind it, connected to, and this will be invested in this before AI came ahead, when somebody sort of went up the Not Stuker road. But so what it does is it does a very first quick assessment, because if it only uses normal light and a normal camera, sort of, is it transparent? Is it colored? Is it sort of first judgment? And then says, do I recognize a piece of a logo? Ooh, I recognize a Coke label. Do I recognize enough of the rest of the bottle to say, oh, I know what this originally was? And I can just look up and table exactly what material it is. So because this is not 300 grams, but only 5,000 hands, you can put like 5 of these across our, and you get a way higher quality output, which basically democratizes this technology. So it's really interesting. You think all the way go back to the what Steve mentioned, which was a massive improvement in steam engines, didn't lead to reduction of the amount of coal used. No, it just took the steam engine everywhere it couldn't go before because it was too expensive. Same is true here. So the quality of waste sorting improves dramatically. You no longer need to do the sampling, because you know exactly what went into the batch. The CFOs of a waste sorting facility about this. Now, again, why do we invest in this? There's another audience for it, because of course you're also discounting how many coke bottles you did, how many found bottles you did. That's great information from IO clients, and they will pay good dollar to have them, because they're now being fined unless they can prove how much material was recycled from the stuff they put on. So this is the lawnmower multi times 10, basically. Here's one other principle, and that I'll close with a beautiful case I have. A case of couples of liquor, also case of investing. Beefeater gin, or any gin you can say, alcoholic gin. I wish I had any involvement with this product, but I'm just giving it as an example of an investment principle, which is very relevant in the world of better for planets and green listed. So some of you might know CETA, especially in alcohol-free gin. So if you go back to the original sort of what do you need to innovate really well? Well, you need a good frustration or a good market pull, sort of consumer need. This is bang on a consumer need, definitely in the UK, which is the 5 p.m. drinks. Afterward drinks, and you don't want to get drunk, you want to sort of have a coherent conversation, you get tired after work, and you want to be able to drive home. Things like that. So it's a very, very clear. The delivery of the product is spectacular. It looks fantastic on shelf, like also in the so-called farm trade, sure, in bars and restaurants. It has really good delivery of a, say, taste flavor. It has a nice range to look at, just like any other gin. Yeah, so something to choose from, etc. Conditioners and body wash. It's literally a block of soap, in a little wrapper. But they managed to sell these. You see how large they are. That is not a large hand, by the way. So it's literally this size. So it's it can be. It's really convenient, but it's also, here's the thing, if you compare it to, this is sold over £20 a lot in like the high-end luxury stores, etc. And it had a market. Wow. I began women, like say women were putting like $900 worth of stuff in their clothing. Buy this. But if you compare it to what it's replacing, which is a bottle with mostly water and then a little bit of active ingredients with a little pump in a box with a cellophane wrapper and another paper wrapper, and a big bow tie in a bag, that's what it's replaced. So it's waste that is actually it's already created zonder. That's going out, which the producer is paying for, and in the end you are paying for, but it's still appealing. And it's still just as appealing. The presentation, the brand was amazing. So taking out, but maintaining the desirability and the sales price is a big trick. So I have a final product example, which is another business we invested in. But before we go there, I just wanted to share this little principle, top pace layering, from a book by Stuart Brand, late 90s. Clock of the Long Now, one of the most profound books I've ever read about a group of engineers looking to build a clock that will run 10,000 years. And the premise, literally, of the first chapters of the book, you realize, they think this is engineering problem. Engineering, it's hard to make something last that long. And they realize this is totally not an engineering problem at all. The problem is, what happens if no one's around for 5,000 years because of whatever, and they find this clock, and they need to understand what it is and what it does and what time it is. And it's this here device that is chopped off in human lives rather than the other way around, which is a clock sort of device we prime up it a second to fraction. With a wonderful piece of serendipity, it was a very young Stuart Brand here, but was a cameraman for that demo I showed you earlier. An incredible. Yeah, so Stuart Brand is still alive, really old, he's still super smart. Now, you're all familiar, because you're Thalemians in some form or other, with Lindy, which kind of covers why, even if Harry Potter and the Bible are sold about in equal numbers in the past 25 years, and that's still going to be read in the year 3000, and this won't be. That principle works the pace layering is a nuanced version of that. It basically says the longer things are, the deeper they embed themselves in the fabric of society. Now, the bottom here is nature. That's sort of what God gave us. Everything else, culture, governance, infrastructure, commerce, and fashion, is kind of what humans built on.
Aren't those all emerging layers from one beneath it?
Sure, well, I would say actually it's probably more likely to be top down. I've thought this for hours, but what it shows, the reason this is important for innovation, is it shows every layer sits on top of another one on which it's dependent. You cannot change something which is like flavor of the day with respecting how products are being sold as share. You cannot change, you could say, the products and the way you deal with them unless you respect the infrastructure upon them. If you start fiddling with the infrastructure just because you want to sell your product, then it's probably a sign you will fail. But you can use it to your benefit if governance, it's not just religion, regulation, or government, but if regulation is changing, you can use the movement of that regulation to enforce infrastructure elsewhere. So you always use what's happening in the lower level toward, but this also explains where something like fake wheat doesn't work. Because it goes right against everything. There's no air grease in all there. There's no place for it on shelf. There is no infrastructure to make the product. So it's hyper expensive to make. No one really knows how to regulate it. Is this safe to eat or not? But culturally, it's even the biggest problem. Try to get an Italian mama to use plant-based meats to make meatballs. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Start taking.
Have you tried canning meatballs?
But you could imagine, this is a shocking thing to sort of keep sort of on the back of your sort of notes when you're listening to some of these product pitches in impact investing. They ignore everything. And they think pure Silicon Valley style, we're going to change as much as possible, because that way they own the whole ecosystem as you go and become the unicorn array, which is the opposite of no. Yeah. So there again, I'm going to give you a 2 example. Yeah. Here's one example of the product I'm really excited about. This is packaging for ready-made meals. Now again, if you show this in sort of an eco-impact investing environment, say, oh my God, it's plastic, that's bad. Well, sorry, but this is polypropylene monomaterial. It's the best recyclable material there is. And you're not going to say, and this is a growing market, ready-made meals. Now, the original proposition is all about basically saying it's less waste because of the way it's manufactured. But actually what it is using way less energy, way less material to create the final product. Now, to give you a sense, you can skip these because it's little quickens and not very important. But what do you think happens when you put less heat into a product during its production? It is a fruit bar. Basically, the product is less destroyed. So the taste is better, the nutrient value is better, the texture remains the same. Everything else is better for the farmer. Exactly. You get a long list of things that are better. So in a way, the way forward and the way we look at what to invest in is, yes, there's a new context around trying to be less harmful for the planet, less polluting. What are the businesses that turn that into a benefit moving forward versus everything split it up and all break? So back to the cars, in the case of the last example with ready-made meals, it's moving away from this and towards that. And Megafact, this company just happens to be one, and that's Lindy. Well, this is definitely going to be really because that's where we came from. So we went to this just to make it manufacturable, and now we drew back to this. So that's that is the story now.